Welcome to today's edition of Disbar, the Florida Bar. I am your host, Les Winston, and I'm with you every weekday from 2 to 3 p.m. right here on The Biz in South Florida. And we also stream live on www.disbarthefloridabar.com. We stream worldwide, so this show has tremendous range, and we are, of course, asking for your help to maintain the show on the air. We can use contributions. Those contributions can be made through the website at www.disbarthefloridabar.com. And it is very important that we maintain the show and continue the process to change the way lawyers are disciplined and to clean up the corruption at the head of the Florida Bar. We have been telling stories of individuals who are victims of the Florida Bar's corruption, victims either financially, in some cases physically victims, and in some cases the death of an individual has been caused by the laxity of the Florida Bar. So this is a very important problem here in Florida. It is creating a lot of rotten apples because the good old boys club is protecting themselves, and it's very difficult to get a level playing field if you're involved in the courts in Florida in many instances. My guest this afternoon is Eliot Bernstein. Eliot, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Eliot, what is your current position? Are you an attorney?
No, I'm not. I'm an inventor.
Okay, and you have patents, I assume, for your inventions?
I have patents that are suspended pending investigations for my inventions.
And how are you involved with the Florida Bar? Let's get the basic premise of this. How did the Florida Bar have an effect on you?
My Florida attorneys, Proskauer Rose, basically attempted to steal my intellectual properties, and one of the avenues of relief I thought was the Florida Bar.
So you filed a complaint against Proskauer and Rose for what? For basically violating your attorney-client privilege, or what was
a whole lot of issues. You know, I also filed against my attorneys almost identical complaints with the Federal Patent Bar, which is headed by Harry Mose of the Office of Enrollment and Discipline. And there, after he had questioned why the Florida Bar and the New York Attorney Disciplinary Committees had reviewed the same information that I had sent him and they had done nothing, he began an investigation whereby he directed me to file with the Commissioner of Patents claims of fraud on the Patent Office by the lawyers who fraudulently submitted oaths of application to the U.S. Patent Office. And so those same lawyers are under investigation at the Federal Patent Bar, and at the Florida Bar and New York Bar we found that they were bulletproof, basically, at both places, until we discovered that the people handling the complaints in both states were actually Proskauer Rose people who were officers of the Florida Bar handling their own complaints against their firm and doing all kinds of things to railroad and whitewash the complaints. And then only all too recently in New York, we have an unfolding whistleblower case of a New York Supreme Court staff attorney who's blown the whistle on the New York attorney regulatory body, including the one that oversees Wall Street, whereby she's claiming that there were favored law firms and lawyers and a cleaner in the ethics department named Naomi Goldstein, who was cleaning complaints for these favored law firms and lawyers, as well as U.S. attorneys, district attorneys, assistant district attorneys, and she also points to illegal representation by the New York Attorney General Andrew Cuomo's offices in efforts to stymie the complaint process. She mentions me in her original lawsuit she files, and she filed that in a federal court under Judge Shira Scheindlin, who then took my lawsuit, which is now a $12 trillion lawsuit, naming the Florida Bar and the Florida Supreme Court, along with a whole host of other lawyers, judges, regulators, and prosecutors in New York and Florida.
You're saying $12 trillion?
Correct, $12 trillion.
Okay.
The patents that were stolen were likened by leading engineers around the world to electricity. So I don't know what the value of electricity has been since Edison, but so far the technologies have driven the internet to the levels that it's at and driven imaging to all new levels. Mm-hmm. And they're used on pretty much every digital imaging and video product.
Is the New York...
There was a lot at stake for these lawyers. You know, this wasn't a small heist of, you know, a little patent. This is one of the largest inventions of the digital imaging time. Probably more powerful at this point than the operating system is the media that drives the internet.
Okay, so let me just reiterate that a little bit because it's a lot to digest in a short period of time. You invented a system. You invented something that was extremely powerful, and your attorneys, Proskauer and Rose, according to what you've told me, you have accused them of stealing your patent, and when you realized what they had done, you reported them to the Florida bar. And you reported them to the New York bar as well?
It's the New York disciplinary departments. The bar is it's also useless in New York, but it's less useful because disciplinary actions happen through the appellate court disciplinary committees.
And is that better than what happens in Florida?
No, they both are terrible. In fact, when I spoke to the New York Senate Judiciary Committee, which is investigating the whistleblower stuff, you know, my suggestion was blow up these bar associations. They're nothing more than basic drinking establishments for lawyers, and, you know, turn all of this infraction, conflicts, et cetera, into felonies and triple the penalties if they violate the public trust and their legal titles. And, you know, put these guys, you know, like any other criminal, not outside the law. I'm also suing in that same lawsuit Greenberg Traurig, as well as Foley and Lardner, and a few other law firms that were involved in Central 2. Greenberg Traurig was my patent attorney for part of the time, and now they're representing the Florida bar in New York against me in my lawsuit. And again, ignoring conflicts, because conflicts is how these guys operate. It's the glue that binds their whole RICO-type criminal law firm enterprises together.
So they can get anything done they need to get done to protect themselves. Is that basically what you feel?
You know, absolutely. An FBI investigator explained it to me that the most insidious crime is a law firm that's corrupted, and where I was bringing in a RICO of several law firms, very powerful firms, that could penetrate, you know, basically the regulatory body. So voila, the regulatory body with the ethics department in New York has a cleaner, and they're whitewashing attorney complaints for U.S. attorneys and whatnot. You're talking a complete takeover, a coup on the legal system by these, I call them dirty, rotten RICO enterprise law firms that are nothing more than criminals using law firms as a front organization. And then wherever they need a regulation broke, you know, I saw some of the Allen Stanford stuff where Proskauer, Tom Slobjam, the partner there, was in a Miami airport teaching Stanford employees how to lie to FBI and SEC investigators. You know, so we see the SEC regulator in Madoff. We see Proskauer has the most clients, and people handling the distribution of Madoff are Proskauer-related. Mark Dreyer's got relations to lawyers. They're all lawyers, and they're able to penetrate the regulatory bodies to, you know, lower banking regulations.
And why are they not also? Why haven't they also penetrated the United States Senate, United States?
They have.
Congress in general. They've also penetrated the executive branch. You have a president that's an attorney.
They have.
Okay, so that's a huge control issue if they can regulate themselves into this kind of power.
Well, they don't. That's exactly. It's not regulate themselves. You mean?
Yeah.
They have the power to regulate themselves, which is a power that's insane that the people would ever grant, which they didn't grant. It's been legally misused. They've created law for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're investigating themselves. That's the biggest joke in the world, and it fails. They can't handle any evidence, and they end up having to keep all of the people out of court through these, dubious denials of due process to people to steal their property, whether it be their patents or, in some instances they're outright torturing people in Guantanamo. And if we look at that, we find you and Bebby and a bunch of lawyers.
Uh-huh.
And it's lawyers have these aren't lawyers, these are criminals.
And so, but in New York, there was a little bit of a different arrangement in the sense that there was a New York staff attorney. When you say, I guess that's somebody that is actually hired and paid by the state of New York to operate on the staff of a disciplinary committee. Is that how that works?
Correct. And she was handling complaints, and she makes allegations in an open U.S. federal court before Judge Shira Scheindlin that, they were whitewashing, destroying documents for favored law firms, for the U.S. attorney, the DA, and the ADA. I mean, it was John Gotti was being tried upstairs 2 floors up, and there was no cleaner at his trial.
Right.
But there was a cleaner at the ethics department in New York.
Right.
The ethics department, like the highest office of law in New York, is run by, actually, this guy that I'm charging in my lawsuit, Tom Cahill, the former chief counsel of that department, who blocked my complaints. He resigned amidst an ethics scandal where they were bringing hookers into the ethics department of New York.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so, if this is what you call ethics, that's the system that I believe exactly is replicated here in Florida, where people are being threatened, people who are going to do good things. Like, for example, there's a clerk of the court, Deborah Yarbrough of the Supreme Court of Florida. She did a solid for me. She, pointed out that the conflicts that I was accusing the Florida bar of and their total, violations of law were in fact wrong, and got me to petition to the Florida Supreme Court, where, again, it started out good, but then who knows what the threats are. When we look at Anderson, this is a woman who testified she was afraid to come out of her office. She's 60-plus years old. She was afraid to come out of her office, that they were stalking her. In fact, Nicole Corrado in New York, another staff attorney of the First Department Appellate Division Departmental Disciplinary Committee, where Anderson works.
Okay.
Nicole Corrado was on her way to testify for Anderson, and senior officers of the Supreme Court of New York threatened her, and this is in a federal lawsuit. That's federal obstruction, extortion by the court people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's out of control. It's so out of control and ridiculous that, I don't know what these bars are all about or what they're for, but they're to block lawyers from getting charged with felony misconduct.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see the state and country falling apart from it. And everywhere you look, every scandal, Ponzi, bank, derivative, nonsense crap is all Ivy League lawyers.
Mm-hmm. Ivy League lawyers, I don't want to pick on all Ivy League lawyers, but you're...
I would.
Yeah,
at this point, that whole hemisphere of education is corrupted.
Okay.
And that the colleges are being actually training children in the wrong way of law, which is this, criminal kind of break the law using law for your own advantage.
Skirting.
And there's no scruples, there's no ethics. If what I saw in New York is the ethics department, we're in a whole world of literally, imagine, this is the Wall Street ethics department washing U.S. attorney complaints. I mean, it's unheard of what she disclosed in Gotham that day.